Hey folks, I just wanted to stop and take a second and do a little recording of my new COVID office. These days we all spend so much time on Zoom calls, and for a long time I've found it useful to just create instructional videos, usually just for my team. Ideally I'd like to start doing it more publicly, but in either case, being able to have a good video setup has become more important. I've also been very interested in audio, and I always listen to music while doing work. So I wanted to get a nice high quality audio solution in place. And I'm a power user, so as you'll see, there's a lot of screen real estate. I continue to find that adding more screens has been helpful, although at this point I think I may have kind of reached the end of that. So without further ado, let's have a look. I use my GoPro camera to kind of zoom in to things. However, I'm relatively new at using the GoPro still, and it would appear that the contrast was a little too great for it, so I'm just going to switch over to the still image. Okay, so let's start with the screens. On the left-hand side, you're going to see that there's an iPad Pro. Then there's an array of 3 monitors. In the middle is the iPad Pro with a 5K monitor. And once you start using 5K monitors, it's kind of hard to go back. So on the left and the right are also 5K. So we've got 3 5K monitors side by side. Then we can kind of rotate down to the phones. So I've got both a iOS, which is the primary phone I use, and an Android phone, which is useful for testing, but I also use it when I go to the UK because it has 2 SIM cards. I have hearing aids because I'm losing my hearing. And then we're going to zip over, last but not least, we also have an Amazon Alexa, which I haven't really been using much recently. I was on the bandwagon pretty early, and I still use it occasionally, but the love has been lost. Next, we're going to focus on audio, and we'll move over to the right-hand side of the desk where we have a DAC and a headphone amplifier, which also acts as a preamp. And that is, both of these are products from Schiit Audio, which I'm a big fan of. And I continue to be surprised by when you pair up something like this with headphones like this, the quality of the music is just so much greater. And so I've really been enjoying listening to music while doing work. I listen to headphones a lot of the time because we're in a COVID world where both Kabuki and I are on Zoom calls. Therefore, headphones are definitely the more appropriate option. It's also the cheapest way to achieve really high fidelity. But I like listening to speakers too, and I do have a pair of KEF LSX speakers, which are really nice quality speakers in a really nice compact size, so you don't need a big room to put them in. These speakers are also the kind of modern connect to anything type, so you can connect to them using AirPlay, you can connect to them using Bluetooth, you can connect them to a few other standards, I think Chromecast maybe, and I don't do any of those because I actually want to make sure I get the benefits of having a high quality DAC. So I actually feed the audio signal directly from the DAC into the line-in input of this. Debatable as to whether I paid for some features there with the KEF LSXs that I'm not actually using, but I'm happy with the decision. And from what I've done, the research I've done, it looks like the additional cost overhead of having those additional wireless standards built in, it's not a big deal. Okay, so let's talk about audio from the other perspective, audio input. So we've got 2 devices here we'll just look at. First is the microphone. So the microphone is a Blue microphone. I've used them for a while now, and I really like them. This one is the Blue Yeti Pro, and I'm using the arm that can be kind of moved up and down to get the microphone in the right place. Is also a Blue product. I find their arm to be quite nice because not only is it nice looking, just I think in general, but it also has some built-in wire management, which is fantastic. Anything that I can do to reduce wires is always welcome. The other device is what is called an audio interface. I'm sure some of you know exactly what that is, but this particular one is the Scarlett 2i2, and it's a fairly basic audio interface. It gets a lot of people who are doing podcasts and such recommend this as kind of a starter audio interface. And you need an audio interface if you're going to have a microphone that uses an XLR cable. You don't need to get, there are getting to be more and more good microphones that use just USB, and if you have that, it plugs right into the computer and life is easier. However, if you, the professional gear tends to always be XLR-based cabling, and also, once you start to have more and more kind of channels of audio coming in, you're probably going to want an audio interface. It's a higher quality way of getting the audio signal through. I'm no expert on this, but this is kind of my way to get started. Okay, so we've talked about audio. Now let's switch to video, and I'm going to have to change the picture quickly here because you may not have noticed, but there's a little thing missing here, and that is my newest camera. I typically have that camera mounted, as you can see here, and there are two cameras that are currently mounted. I don't know if I'll keep two, but sometimes it's useful to have kind of two different angles to shift between. And in fact, the third location a camera can go is here. This is kind of a flexible mounting station that can be used to move the camera around into a precise position if that's needed. In my case, I have a Fujifilm X-T4 as my primary camera for video, and then I have an X-H1, again Fujifilm X-H1 as that secondary camera. It doesn't really matter which camera you use, as long as you have, really what you're looking for is a camera that has a nice shallow depth of field. So I tend to use prime lenses or really good zoom lenses. Something that my cameras are not full frame. So because they're not full frame, you need to be have a little bit of a faster lens. If I have a lens that's f2, that's plenty fast enough. In fact, f2.8 is plenty fast enough. But you start getting into f4, and you get less impact. Certainly, by the time you're at f5.6 or whatever, most of the effect is gone. You'll still have, any camera will have just a much higher quality picture than what you get built in. I have the iMac Pro. iMacs are notorious for how terrible the webcams are. The iMac Pro has a better webcam, but it's still very bad. So this is a dramatic improvement. One of the key things that was important for me here was to use quick release connectors. These cameras are they're in place to do video, but I don't really enjoy video outside of the necessity of having it for Zoom calls and other things. I enjoy taking still photographs, and so I want to make sure that it's really easy for me to detach the camera and go out and take pictures with it. Still not doing that quite as much as I'd like, but at least I can. One important thing about having good video is to have good lighting, and I'm lucky that during the day I have good natural light coming in from two different sides, so that there's not a huge problem there. However, at night the lighting obviously is I have a decent amount of overhead lights, but it's just not very good lighting for video, and the video quality definitely suffers. Even now that I have good lighting, as I look back, and during daylight, it's often a notable boost to have some key lights on. And what you see here are two key lights. And specifically they're the Elgato key lights, that's what they're called. So in lighting, I only just recently learned this, a key light is a term that's used, but in this case it's also the name of the product. And Elgato as a company is gearing themselves towards gamers, or really people who are doing streaming of games. This product was designed for people who are doing streaming of video in the gaming community, but it has, their products go well beyond that now, and they're very well done. What's nice is that these lights can be completely adjusted in terms of intensity, the color, and all that adjustment can be done in software. So on both iOS devices like my phone or tablet, as well, and my desktop, I can control that. And that may not sound like a big deal. I mean, a lot of the other products will give you some sort of a remote control, but I really don't need another remote control, and just being able to do it in software actually does make the whole process easier. Okay, well, we've pretty much finished up now with everything that's on the desktop, and I guess the last thing as we zoom out is just to look at the desk itself. It is a standing desk, but with an electric motor, so it can be moved up and down. I tend to use it in the upright position every day, and then after hopefully doing some exercise, when I come back, I then move it to a seated position and sit for the rest of the day. The very last thing, and this may be of less interest to some people, is to cover quickly the server rack. Okay, in this server rack there are 4 things here that we need to look at, and we'll just go from the bottom to the top, I guess. In the bottom we have the Furman power conditioner. This is something I didn't expect to need, and probably don't need formally, but my audio gear, I was getting some hum and buzz in the audio signal, and I started doing research, and I found that a lot of people were claiming that a power conditioner, that's what this is, basically it conditions, making sure that the quality of the power coming in is of the highest quality. And so I bought that and put it in, and I have to say that for me it worked. I think it is kind of hit and miss. So unless you're maybe more of an expert than I am, it's a little bit hard to tell, if the noise, if you have a noise floor in your audio, whether that's truly coming from an electrical interference. But in these modern times, electrical interference is more common than you might imagine, and so a power conditioner may potentially be able to help you there. So that's the first part. Okay, next up the stack is UPS, and I don't know, what can I say? If you don't have a UPS in front of your computer, you're not really living. So yeah, go out and get one. Obviously, for equipment like a computer, this also is true for audio equipment, you need to make sure you have a high quality one, and in particular you need to make sure you have one that has a natural sine wave in it. If you don't, you should expect to run into some problems down the road. Next step up on the rack is the Ansel server, and this provides me the ability to fire up a number of different virtual machines using kind of server grade memory and processors. And effectively, I mean, obviously everyone knows the cloud is the big thing these days, and the cloud is actually where I deploy most things that I'm doing technically. However, sometimes it's nice just to have your own servers running in the house, and so I can run them from here. And then last but not least is the network switch, and in this case I kind of indulged myself a little bit recently and upgraded to a 10 gigabit switch, which is, most switches today run at 1 gigabit per second, but this one goes to 11. So It's, is it noticeably faster? Not really, not yet, but, we'll get there, and I'm excited about it. So that's the rack, and I guess let's move out of here and we'll just finish up. Okay, well, this has already gone longer than I expected it, so I'm going to stop here. If anyone has questions about any part of this, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, feel free to complain that it was too long in the first place. That's it. Talk to you soon.